Howdy, Chess College Humanities 4, the Red Bluff class. It is Friday, 2/10/23. We'll make this brief. Hope you guys are doing your assignments out there. Please do check in on the announcements a couple times a week. And maybe you'll watch this video this time. Um, I'm going to talk a few things before I talk about a silent film that you need to know about. I want to make sure you're staying on course. I noticed in the discussion, you all didn't participate in the discussion. I'm going to post another discussion next week, and you are supposedly you're supposed to participate in it. It is called a discussion. That means everybody needs to jump right in, and it is part of your grade to discuss, just like watching these and your journal, your papers, it's all part of the overall grade. The discussions is part of the participation. I'll remind you again when I see you guys next week. If you're not watching these, like hopefully you see this. Um, look at your journals. When I see you guys next, I'll go over the journal in more detail. But it's a daily diary, a weekly diary. That's all I need is a weekly diary. What we say, what we do, what we see, what we discuss, the papers, the readings of the book. By now, y'all should be getting the textbook because I want you to read that first chapter. Uh, and um, and chapter 10 also will help put some of this in context, the silent film era. We'll continue with the documentary and we'll break out of the silent films hopefully sometimes Tuesday. Um, we'll see how it goes. Today, I want to talk about an important silent film, a revolutionary silent film that has fallen in somewhat of a disgrace after over 100 years. It came out in about 1915, so it's over 100 years old. Directed by D.W. Griffith, who was a groundbreaking Hollywood director who created many of the modern techniques that we're still using to this day: tracking shots, close-ups, moving the camera. Um, was all on his watch. A lot of it was in this film. Birth of a Nation. It takes place during the Civil War, post-Civil War, and in it, uh, a bunch of freed slaves uh, take their revenge on the white town, and the white people in the town are afraid for their lives, and so they run and hide, and the African American former slaves are seeking some payback and revenge on them. And it all looks like the white people are very innocent, and the black people are very villainous. And to tell you how they used to do these things, it's mostly white actors performing in blackface. Um, that's how they used to roll in those days. And what makes this film, please watch the clip. When you see this lecture, there'll be a clip right below it in modules, Birth of a Nation clip, and it kind of dissects why the film matters and why is it in somewhat disgrace. Because in the movie, after you watch it, it's on YouTube. You all should watch it. I know you won't, but you should, because it is a revolution. It might look hokey and dated and all that, but it was cutting edge technology in 1915, and that's when we're involved in World War One. By the way, um, so the world was at war, and it's the industrial age is in full bore. There's airplanes and automobiles, but this film is a throwback to a time where that none of that existed, but slavery did. The war between the states, And what happens in this film that makes it a racist film is how the black slaves are depicted as essentially rapists and beasts of the land. And also, um, at the very end of the day, the cavalry doesn't come to save the day. The Ku Klux Klan comes to save the day. Hundreds of these guys in white robes and horseback come in and save the white town from the evil black people. And with thunderous applause and orchestrations blaring, they were heroes. And this film was so popular in the day that Woodrow Wilson, who was the president at the time, screened it several times at the White House. It was a big box office smash, and the Ku Klux Klan, which was a small organization in the early 1900s, uh, after people saw this film, their ranks swelled to over 100,000 recruits. People were joining up. That's how powerful storytelling is. It's how powerful cinema is. This was an early version of a phenomenon like Gone with the Wind or Star Wars or the Marvel Comics series. Yes, it was that big. It wasn't until some black writers in inner cities in Chicago and New York started writing critically about the film. And I don't mean critically in a good way. They called it out as a racist film. And it took people aback because they had to go re examine it. And they go, oh, oh, it does look pretty bad. And so they pulled it out of distribution. It had made a lot of money for the day. And D.W. Griffith was sort of in disgrace. Now, his excuse was he was raised in the South during that era, and that's what he depicted what he saw, which is probably close to the truth. No denying it, but he should have known better because it wasn't the truth. And by 1915, everybody knew it wasn't the truth. But we still lived in the Jim Crow. I should look up what Jim Crow means. It's a term, it's a vaudeville term actually, about white actors performing in blackface, and it's always exaggerated depictions of black Americans. The women, what they call them, Jezebels, and the men were essentially either dancers or would-be rapists. Uh, anyway, that's how it rolled in those days. And so Jim Crow was the law of the land in this country up until the 1970s in some states. And in some states, I'm sure they'd still like to keep it going. It essentially gave Black Americans no rights, no voting rights. It actually allowed them to be lynched for simply looking at a white woman or speaking to a white woman. They could be lynched and killed over it. And Jim Crow is still haunting people out there. They don't like to use the term, the Republicans, but it's in the back of the vocabulary as they start curtailing voter rights and black rights in certain states. They're still doing this. So Jim Crow really never leaves us. And before you call me a left wing liberal, you can Google all this. It's the facts. And if you don't understand facts, well, then that's up to you. Anyway, so this film, which is really revolutionary in its technique, in its storytelling, and it changed the course of Hollywood history, was labeled a racist film. So it's got an asterisk on its name. He later made another film called Intolerance, and came out 2 or 3 years later, and it's really quite an outstanding film. And it was trying to make up for the the film, The Birth of a Nation, and it's essentially depicts almost the story of mankind. Starts in the caveman days, and it goes to Roman Empire, and goes to the days of biblical era, Jesus Christ days, all the way up until modern times. It's a huge epic. They filmed it down in LA. When I lived in LA, the sets were built, the huge, gigantic sets. Some of them were still standing uh, where they filmed a lot of Intolerance. Um, Hundreds and hundreds of extras, lots of cameras, lots of pageantry, elephants. It was a huge production. It kind of made up for Birth of a Nation, but DW never really survived into the sound era, and he died soon thereafter, sort of sort of in disgrace, but with, like I say, an asterisk on his name for being a revolutionary when it came to the technology of filmmaking as we know it to this day. So look for that in your modules. Birth of a Nation. It'll be an analysis of it. It's a short 10-minute film. Um, Maybe we could talk about it in class. Um, or maybe I could show the film clip in class, or I could talk about it then. Anyway, there's no discussion this week because I want you to work on your papers. Remember those things are due next Tuesday, I believe. So please get those in. Um, I'll see you next week. Keep watching movies. Why don't you guys watch a movie this week, or TV series? I don't care, and be prepared to talk to it in live in the class when I see you next Tuesday. We're going to get better at that class. The technical glitches right now, and I apologize for those because the whole technical setup's new to me. Um, it's kind of a pain. Hopefully, it'll get better as we get better. And but right now, I hope you guys are enjoying that class. Hope you're getting something out of it. I know I'm getting something from your stories, and please keep sharing them. And I'll see you on Tuesday when the story of film continues.